Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 259 of Album of the Day, in which for today's album review, I'm going to be doing my first review on this channel of a 2020 album that was released back in January this year, and it's from an artist who has been going through some pretty drastic transitions. She started out as kind of this strange sort of like singer, like pop singer, half human, half AI kind of meme that has like loads of videos on YouTube if you just go on to her YouTube channel. But lately she's been transitioning into a heavier sound, embracing more elements of new metal, alternative metal, industrial, and a whole lot more. Resulting in a much more kind of human sound. I am talking about the singer known as Poppy, and I'm reviewing her third studio album, which was released on January 10th, 2020, so pretty early on in the year, and the album is called I Disagree, the follow-up to 2018's Am I a Girl, which was released on Diplo's Mad Decent label. And Poppy also lately has been a frequent collaborator with Grimes, who has also been sort of taken on similar sounds, like on her pretty banging single from 2018, We Appreciate Power, featuring Hana. Anyway, Grimes aside, let's talk about Poppy. I had kind of vaguely heard her name in the past, but it actually wasn't until this album when I finally got to listen to a full project of her, but I kind of looked her up a little more and sort of found that she definitely started out as, incredibly poppy and sort of sweet and kind of slick in her music. But then I, of course, managed to look up other stuff that she had done, including that Scary Mask single, and sort of saw that there was definitely a pretty big difference between that and like her 2017 material, and how bigger and how heavier the guitars were, and how fast the drumming was, and how she was like screaming her brains out at certain moments of the song. And she definitely continues that sort of thing on I Disagree. And initially it is kind of a stylistic change. It initially was, it took a little bit of kind of, settling in for me. Like the first time I listened to this album, I had kind of mixed emotions about it, where I liked the risks she was taking, but, it kind of was a little messy. But then I saw other people like giving it some widespread acclaim, and I decided, hey, let's give this another chance, and boy am I glad I did, because this is one of my favorite records of the year, and I will say, it definitely kicks ass, I will say that. And, even though this is definitely Poppy's heaviest album of her career, it also definitely is a very eclectic album, and all the styles it sort of goes through, and in some of the transitions that happen. I mean, there are some very kind of Mr. Bungle kind of inspired transitions into various sounds, as Anthony Fantano pointed out. One example of this is definitely on the opening track, Concrete, which goes through many musical phases. We start out with these blaring sirens and these kind of whispered refrains of bury me 6 feet deep, cover me in concrete, turn me into a street. Then we get these big, booming guitars and drums, and then this really kind of sugary, kind of jaunty chorus that definitely reminds me of like J-Rock. Chewy, chewy, yummy, 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 sharp and pointy, yummy, yummy, yummy. It's the kind of thing that may come off as annoying at first, but then eventually will kind of sink into your conscious in a way that's really interesting. The track as a whole kind of reminds me of like a baby metal song a little bit in its mix of metal and J-pop. The well, in J-pop. Then we get some very vintage, sort of harpsichord heavy kind of pop music with doo-wop vocals and this sort of other references to these sweet treats like tea and ice cream and whatnot. It definitely sounds very Magical Mystery Tour inspired. The harpsichord on the track really reminds me of a song like Penny Lane or something because of how jaunty the melody is. However, the one element of the song that I just do not like at all are those fake crowd shouts toward the end of the track. Poppy! Poppy! They just sound so badly recorded and it's kind of corny. And also, the ending doesn't really do that much for me. That sort of comes down to my overall issue with the track. I think it's great. I think the first leg of the song is killer. It's great, but once those shouts come in, it's it's definitely a little bit of a dud in the track list for me. The next track on here, which is the title cut, I disagree. Definitely is in my opinion, a much more consistent cut, and definitely has some awesome sort of edge to it. Lyrically, it seems to be Poppy seems to be addressing this person that's sort of done her wrong, and sort of saying that she disagrees with basically everything that he's trying to tell her is going on. Basically everything this person's trying to egg on her basically. And the song also has just such an incredible, haunting hook on it that I do really like. This is definitely one example of her sort of, proven to those that have kind of tried to put her in a particular box and just making her do one particular thing. This song basically is her kind of raising the finger at those people and sort of doing whatever she wants with her music, which I do really like that. And this is one of the first songs on here where Poppy actually lets out a legitimate shrill as hell scream, and it sounds pretty amazing. The next track, which is probably my favorite track on the record, Blood Money, is kind of a song about Poppy along with her collaborating partner Titanic Sinclair, sort of talking about their own sort of experiences with the music industry of hypocrisy and liars and stuff like that. It's kind of what I've looked up on Genius about the song recently. And there's even a pretty memorable line in the song of never forget the excess of a man, because grabbing hands always grab what they can. And I also do want to go ahead and mention that Poppy actually recently split with Titanic. Sort of in late 2019. So it definitely is a pretty big sort of, it is yet another pretty big transition happening in her music career right here. Not only is lyrically the song, I think, fantastic, but also musically the track just, has some serious balls to it. It's got these sort of whooshing, sort of crashing synthesizer stylings. It definitely has all these really cool layers of noise in that instrumental breakdown. And you can even hear Poppy laughing at one point in the song, really just proving how much fun she and her collaborators are just having on this song. It definitely has a little bit of that dubstep sort of sound, but then it also has kind of the guitar distortion, kind of the hard as nails fuzz of maybe an Ozzy Osbourne song, and maybe even Queens of the Stone Age is a little bit of a sound I hear on some of the tracks here, on those harmonized guitar riffs on the next track. Anything Like Me, which overall kind of sounds like a combo of a Marilyn Manson classic and like a Billie Eilish song. Especially those kind of, especially that do 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 keyboard and the sort of thumping beat really reminds me of like Bury a Friend, or pretty much any given song off of When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go, the Billie Eilish album. The Billie Eilish album. And on the song, Poppy is really like reflecting on her sort of turning to someone else, but sort of warning her peers, you know, that they shouldn't be anything like her, that they shouldn't try to copy her music or what she's doing. You know, she's aiming to be like one very unique artist here. I already highlighted the harmonized guitar solo. I think it's incredible, and it does make a very nice transition into a dreamier, more psychedelic end section with these sort of soaring vocal harmonies and sort of and kind of psychedelic guitars and organs. It's a really nice way to end the song. The track Fill the Crown, kind of starts out sounding a little bit like, maybe like a grunge song a little bit. I mean, I definitely hear a little bit of grunge influence happening on this record. And it's definitely in a good way, too. Then we get these kind of clucking synthesizers and sort of almost hip-hop inspired refrain of Fill the Crown, let them know fed. And of course featuring those sort of, some sort of like backwards effects going on that refrain too. Then we go into this much heavier chorus, and there's an oddly familiar sounding background vocal on the track. You know, you'd be hard-pressed to tell me that is not Marilyn Manson singing with Poppy on there. And I also do really like how the refrain of you can be anyone you want to be, you can be free, is pretty much a thesis on basically Poppy having more artistic freedom than she's ever had before in her entire career, which, you know, must feel pretty awesome, I bet. The song Nothing I Need does take a little bit of a breather from the heavier tracks that pretty much define the first half of the record, embracing more of a slinky dream pop kind of sound. I mean, it reminds me of Beach House a little bit, but it also reminds me of like Tame Impala's Currents a little bit, in kind of the groove and sort of how colorful the synths are on the track. And even though it's not like the super heavy, pumped up moment on the album, it definitely is one of the standout tracks on here. She's sort of developing this very meditative sort of, she's like in this very almost meditative state on this track, sort of finding out that all the things that, you know, she thought she needed earlier in her career, she doesn't really need them anymore. And also I think that the layers of synths in that chorus are really are gorgeous and sort of bubbly. It's a nice little break before we go into the very riveting and intense Sit Stay, which opens up with these Trent Reznor inspired kind of bassy beats and on this track, Poppy's sort of, you know, telling all the people that have, you know, wronged her to, you know, just, you know, sit, stay, lie down, and just like leave her alone. And she's sort of embracing a whole new storyline as the Buggles video Killed the Radio Star inspired chorus does imply. Supply, which I love how she sort of takes that melody from that song and then also the notable like hook from that song and kind of flips its meaning a little bit to fit in with kind of the subject matter of the song. And also I love how haunting the guitars and the vocals are on that section before the song goes into this just totally bonkers breakdown with these killer guitar solos and Poppy just screaming her guts out. So definitely one of the highlights here. A couple of lulls in the track list for me that kind of follow the track Bite Your Teeth. Though I do really like the attitude she displays on the track and that heavy breakdown at the end, I think is very killer too. I just think lyrically the song is a little repetitive, a little one-dimensional, and also structurally it feels a little bit undercooked. The kind of dreamier bridge feels kind of thrown in there, for example, even though it does eventually lead into definitely one of my favorite kind of instrumental breakdowns at the end. And as it has some of Poppy's best screams on the entire record. But even more underwhelming, in my opinion, is the track Sick of the Sun, which, is fine. I'm fine with another dream pop ballad in there. It's just that it's musically, it feels a little less like it definitely feels a little less memorable than like Nothing I Need. It's kind of similar ideas as that track, just a little bit blander, in my opinion. Even though I do appreciate Poppy's sort of, really going into talking about her depression and other feelings she's been having lately. I mean, those themes do also continue on the amazing closing track, Don't Go Outside, which I think is a very strong way to end the album. It opens up with these kind of harmonized guitar lines. Reminds me a little bit of like Green Day's Wake Me Up When September Ends, which is very much a compliment, by the way. And she's sort of warning her audience, that the outside world is not quite as inviting as it seems. I mean, sometimes it's inviting, but other times it's definitely full of, so it can be very deceiving too. And I love that moment in the song where those electronics, vocal harmonies, and that kind of filtered drum machine come in. It definitely is a very chilling and sort of very tear-inducing mix of sounds in the beginning of the track. Then the middle section of the song is incredibly haunting and sort of gothic almost, with its very kind of dark acoustic guitars and that sort of chilling refrain of everything will be okay. And then the final section of the song is like this incredibly triumphant victory lap with these impeccable layers of vocals at the end of the track, along with these kind of cinematic guitar riffs in there. And given how semi-cinematic the opening track was, it is kind of cool to see the last song on the record take a similar angle. Similar angle. It's essentially Iron Maiden meets the Beatles at the end of the track, and that's saying a lot. Overall, very much dug this record. I think this venture into new metal has been a very awesome one. It kicked a lot of ass, I thought. Poppy, I think, really brought a lot of personality and came through with easily her most honest and direct set of songs of her career. And I'm really excited to see where her musical future takes her. So yeah, light 8 out of 10 on this new Poppy record. I disagree, and I'll see you for episode 260.